I negotiated my manager's rate for this because the manager was unwilling to do it. What's funny is my initial instinct when I met with her, even though everything sounded good on paper, was I was like, this doesn't feel right. And I didn't listen. I honestly think like the biggest, probably most important advice that I can say is welcome to Actors Off Script, a podcast about craft, career, and collective change. I'm Vinitha Kalra, and every episode I sit down with a fellow actor to watch a self-tape that booked, discuss the choices that made it land, and talk more broadly about career, industry, and how we could be doing all of this better together. I hope you enjoy the episode. Well, thanks for joining me, Carly. Thanks for having me. What an honor. Carly Tatiana Pandza is a screenwriter, director, actor, and producer who developed and was the head writer for the IP that became the wildly successful Disney Channel franchise Descendants. She's also the winner of the Cecil B. DeMille Award for Achievement in Screen Acting at Chapman University, where she received dual BFAs in film production and screen acting, and is the founder of Her Theater Company, a 100% female-owned and operated boutique theater company in Los Angeles. Carly, what audition are we looking at today? We are looking at the audition for the role of Stevie from the short film Generation Well that I was the lead in. Can you give us a quick synopsis of what this movie is about? After a serious run-in with the law, a young woman becomes obsessed with an officer who looks identical to her deceased father.
Lefty, how'd you find me?
Oh, a couple people. Wasn't too tricky.
If it's money you want, then I got bad news.
I don't need the money. I didn't think you'd be this far out east.
Well, I had some jobs, did those things for a while. Is your mother still alive?
She is.
And why are you here?
I'm pregnant.
You with a drunk? So you are one.
Something in me. I just needed to see you.
Here I am. Stevie.
Robert Altos?
Yeah.
I'm your daughter.
You're a lefty. So how'd you find me?
Oh, a couple people. Wasn't too tricky.
Well, if you're looking for money,
I don't need the money. I didn't think you'd be this far out east.
Well, I had some jobs. Did those things for a while. Is your mother still alive?
She is.
And why are you here?
I'm pregnant.
You with a drunk? So then you're one.
Something in me just needed to see you.
Here I am.
This project has gone on to screen at like over a couple of dozen festivals at this point. It's won a bunch of awards. You yourself won an award for Best Actor at San Francisco International Film Festival. So obviously it's been like a very successful indie run so far. In terms of finding the project, just to set the stage, you're repped. You get auditions for union projects all the time, but this is a project you went and found yourself, correct?
I found it myself. I self-submitted and I booked it, and then my reps came in and handled the paperwork and such. But I mean, I'm so proud of myself. Like, I am no longer with this manager, but I negotiated my manager's rate for this because that manager was unwilling to do it. That's probably why I'm no longer with that manager.
Okay.
So I was very, very clear, like, I am a value. They want me, like, I'm gonna do a great job, but very, very low budget, and I didn't want my reps' fees to come out of that budget, and so they honored it.
Just having this sort of ability to say, like, I know what I'm worth and I'm going to ask for it. And even if like the people that would be benefiting from it aren't even helping me on that, I still know that I'm doing the right thing is like a really sort of impressive thing to do, I think. So let's talk about your audition prep. When you first got this audition, you got the sides. What was your kind of initial reaction to the sides?
I liked that there wasn't that many words. I liked that there was a lot of silence,
Yeah.
to be honest. But I remember this acting teacher saying something to the effect of, every single actor is probably like super perfect for 1 to 2 roles in their lifetime. And like when you're an actor and you hear that, you're like, shut up, no. I'm so multidimensional. I can do anything. But I think he's pretty spot on. And the more I reflect specifically on this character, the more I'm like, wow, like I really do think this role was kind of custom made for me. And it wasn't, but I just think it was so perfect for me in terms of what this character specifically was going through. In the sides that I got, she goes to confront her father after having been estranged from her father for many years. And I have literally had almost that exact scene. I've done that. I've had that in my life. So it's like I read it and I was like, I know exactly what's going on here and all the things I'm going to pull from my own experience. I remember it talked about in the script, I think it said something like, oh, it's a little messy. It's messy around where he is. And I remember walking in to the house that I grew up in, hadn't been there in years, hadn't talked to my dad in 5 years. And I remember seeing it being a mess and like having like the reaction that I had to the environment around me. So that was one of the first things that I wrote down in my prep. What do I see around me and how is it affecting me? Like, what are the sources that I see around me and how do I feel about those things? Like, oh, I see garbage over here. I see empty bottles of beer over here. But like, I made it up, right? I actually took a moment to think of what am I taking in and how long since I've been here and all of that, because I remember doing that in my life. That was the biggest thing that struck me was that specificity and just how not that much dialogue there was and all of the things the unsaid things.
It's a heavy subtext scene. Yeah, exactly.
Heavy ass subtext.
Heavy, which is often, I think, really hard for a lot of actors to play. I would say like a lot of actors then can fall in the trap of becoming passive with it.
It was really cool for me to rewatch my initial audition and then see the final product.
Yeah.
And just to see
what is your takeaway from that?
It's funny because obviously there's things that I see in the audition where I'm like, oh, like I should have taken more time and like all this stuff, but it's like it was an initial audition, right? So it's really cool. The translation of like I was connected to the core of something from when I auditioned, but then to watch the final product and see that the core was still there, but that all the different nuance and things of all how much I had worked on being the character and all the other scenes, how much it informed just how much more multidimensional the final scene was, like how much it was layered on top. It was just like more and more layers.
So what further prep did you do for the shoot that informed those layers?
So people on set teased me. They were like, whose folder of 7 scripts is this? I'm like, mine. So it's hard for me to write everything on one script. I don't know if you have that experience. because it gets too messy. I have too many ideas and too many things. So I had, I think, like 5 to 7 scripts that I had printed.
Wow.
So there was one script that showed when we were doing what on what day so that I could look and just have a visual representation of where are we in the story. And also just so like daily I could know emotionally what I was preparing for. So it looks like I have like this 5 questions list that's like I'm just dealing with like the where and the who and the what and like what's my view of the world and like all that stuff. I bought a fake mini Prego belly off of Amazon and I wore it around the house. So I dealt with how awkward does it feel and what does it do to my physicality? I talked and interviewed about 2 or 3 of my friends who have been pregnant and given birth so that I had a sense of like what's it like when you're close to giving birth. I wanted to know like anything I should know about like how did you walk towards the end? And I also asked them because my water breaks at the end of the film. Spoiler alert. So I wanted to know, like, when your water breaks, does it hurt? Does it just feel like you're peeing yourself? Do you know that it's happening? So so I could physically deal with that. So I went through the entire script and I wrote, what is the problem that I am actively trying to solve moment by moment? And then this other one, I wrote down all of my sources. So, like, I would go through and like highlight different things and underline different things of like, there's like the people. And then I would write down like, how does each one of those sources make me feel different things that it could possibly be making me feel in any given moment. So, this one I wrote down my need for every single scene and different beats. Like, oh, I need this one, I need to be free. This one, I need to hide. This one, I wrote down creative task in here as well. And like at least the way that one of my teachers described creative tasks, it's much more poetic and not as like from your mind. So like let me just give you an example so you know what I'm talking about. This is when I'm like in the cop car and I see that he like I think he's my dad or he looks like my dad. I wrote the creative task. I wrote down I want to lasso the moon, which is his heart, and I want to pull it into my heart and open my heart. Like I played around within the scenes of like obviously, I'm not going to in the scene be like, right? But you could do that like when you're doing your prep to see how does that make you feel. Even just thinking about that thing and having it kind of be integrated in my prep, what does it do for me internally underneath the surface? I'm really activated by stuff that's like really, really simple. Like I like need love or I need this. And then also stuff that's like abstract that gets me out of my mind because when you're acting you're in your body a lot of times too before set like before I just was always looking at my scripts. I was always looking at my prep because like I said there was so few lines. I had to be like where am I emotionally like in the linear structure of the story.
Are there things in this final cut that are surprising to you, either in your own work or in how they chose to edit your work?
Surprising to me, how do you mean?
Just we have expectations, I think both when we go into an audition of like what this scene is gonna like be at the end, and even when we go and we perform it, I think we have expectations of like I think this is what it's gonna look like, or this is what I expect will happen, and then we see the final product, and I know for me it's always a little bit like, oh.
Yeah.
Something that struck me in watching your final cut was just how much the edit stayed on you, as opposed to going back and forth between you and your father.
I did notice that, and I remember my teacher. Not that this is the truth. I'm also the lead character,
right?
Because and also we never know too. We don't know. I know they were using a really like loud dolly that day with me and Corey, who played my father. So it's like I also am like sometimes you watch stuff, you're like maybe it's because the other stuff was unusable. But I also know like a teacher. I've had teachers be like, not because it's true, because you shouldn't like worry about it or beat yourself up over it. But if you're good and you're giving them something new and different every time, most likely they're not going to cut away from you, especially if you're the lead.
If you're the lead, yeah. If the story's about you, for sure. Yeah. I've had the opposite where I've been in scenes where I just sort of randomly happened to know who the editor was. And I'm talking like massive projects and
Yeah.
or had some connection to the editor. And the editor was like, oh, we thought you were amazing. We wanted to cut you in more, but we couldn't because the story required us to be on the lead, you know? And
Yeah,
so it's,
for sure. No.
yeah,
So it's like it doesn't like you definitely don't want to like go down that rabbit hole and be like, "Oh, it's because." But yeah, I actually that was the biggest thing that surprised me. I was like, "Whoa, they stayed on me this whole scene." And I also know that I did a really good job in that scene and I really liked how it came across. So
yeah,
I was like, "Cool."
yeah.
That was cool. Overall, I'm very, very proud of the work that I did, but I am driven and I like to challenge myself and I can't not see this stuff. So for me, there's definitely a few moments for me where I'm like, oh, that wasn't specific. But it's like, of course, that's what I'm gonna like glom onto.
Are there any lessons or takeaways from the experience of this audition and this booking for you?
Oh, so many takeaways. Like we'll take on these roles and then you transform through doing the role. And you
Mm,
usually get and are going through what the character is going through. So I know for sure, like one of the biggest things that Stevie was going through was like loving herself and like letting go of her past and forgiving herself and like being okay with who she is because she sees this possibility of this life. And I was literally going through the same exact thing because, of course, art imitates life and life imitates art. I got a lot about abdicating for myself. You know, there was
mm,
definitely a couple moments where Jack, Sarah, the writer director, is so extraordinary, but not through fault of Jack or anybody else. But I think sometimes actors can start to be related to like we're these fixed objects versus like people.
sure.
So there was just times like particularly during the jail scene, perfect example. It was one of the most emotional scenes and like the hardest scene. And they brought me to set before they were ready for me. And there were people that were talking loud because they were setting things up and like trying to talk to me. And I literally was like, I'm gonna go and you please only come and get me like when you guys are like ready to go. Cause I will be ready to go. But it's like there was a moment where I was just gonna be like, I saw myself going down one road of like, it's
Sure.
fine, let me not be a diva, whatever the things we say versus like communicating what we need. And I went to Jack and I was like, I need to leave. And I was like, and when I come, like, can you please tell people not to talk to me like
Sure.
until after? Like, if you want to get if you want to get a good take, like, you
Right,
know,
right.
and like that you can do it in a way that's kind and just honest and not,
No, I think that's a great point. The last shoot I was on, there was, some folks who were like basically were background, but then kind of got a line or two. And so then they were in these scenes waiting around for the next scene. And I'm trying to prep for my next scene that might have some like, emotional stuff that I need to do in it. And they're just sitting there like chatting with me because they're having a great time. And it's like, how do I navigate? Like, I want to be nice to you. I want you to feel good on this set. And also like, I need my space to do my work right now. And I think it is a
yeah,
hard thing to navigate. Like, you don't want to be the
completely.
difficult person on set, but you also want to like do the work you're there to do.
For
Um,
sure. Isn't
yeah.
it crazy too, as women, just like basic communication of our needs is makes us worry that people are gonna think we're difficult.
100%
It's
because
like
that's how it gets interpreted so often. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. I definitely, it was a student film. It was a senior thesis film. And I know there was times that because I communicated and advocated for myself, like people got to be better in their job and they got training, but not because I was like, I'm gonna school you. Like wasn't from that place. It was like, please bring me to set like right when you're ready for me. Cause that's at least who I am for myself is like when I'm on set or when I'm in a project or just whether I'm hanging out with friends or family, like the space will be better because I am there.
Is there anything you were hoping would come out of this booking and did it?
I mean, I was definitely hoping, like, you have the hope, right? That it's like some like huge rep out of nowhere is going to be like, who's this? And,
Right.
like, snatch you up. And I think it's important to acknowledge it didn't,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah.
Like, and here's the thing too, like, I believe that like seeds are planted, like, I know that I am a different actor and a different human being after doing this. I, visited several of the festivals because it's been on the festival circuit. And like, I have like footage and reviews and things. I recently signed with a new rep in Los Angeles and like I sent them all this stuff. And the first thing that they were like, your talent, we are blown away by your talent. And so often
Wow.
I've had meetings where the first thing they say is they have stars in their eyes because they see the baldness or the look and they're like, we could make so much money off you. Like that's what's in the background. But it's like, I need someone that can see me for all of who I am and see my trainings. You know, there is very much part of our culture, this get rich quick kind of scheme, or this like, this was my big break, right? Like, this is my big break. And then it like skyrocketed me to stardom. Like, who knows what's going to come out of this, but that's not what's come out of this yet.
Sure.
And I think I read this thing one time of this person who is always posting inspiring things about artists. And I think this is really true. And I think we need to start having this be more of a reality, especially for people who are, you know, middle class and like who don't come from a bunch of privilege, is like, you think it's going to be some big break. Like you're going to get a call from Spielberg tomorrow. And I'm not saying that that's not possible, but that's probably the exception. That's most likely not going to be the thing that's going to happen. But what is going to happen is like all of these, like, there's a break and there's a break and there's a break and there's a break. And all these like smaller baby step things where like the door is like opened a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger each and each time. And then when you look back on your life, you're like, oh, all those things led up to this. Like it makes so much sense looking back, but you can never really see it when you're in it.
Okay, so where would you say you are at this stage of your career, and did this booking move your career forward in some way, even if it wasn't like the, you know, everyone suddenly
for sure.
discovered you?
It for sure moved my career forward. The footage that I have from this is the best footage I've ever had from anything that I've ever done. There's also the aspect of me just experiencing myself as an actor of like, oh, like I can be the lead in film and like carry it, like have that experience of that, like knowing myself as that. So there's like that kind of like energetic transformation that's like really important for me. But I feel like it's definitely solidified for me quality over quantity, I think. I feel like before I was so like, you know, as an actor, you can get in scarcity mode and other people are in scarcity mode. So it influences you and you're like, I gotta submit for everything. And you're doing all these auditions for things that you don't want to do. And I think it's important when actors have the realization and the clarifying of like, oh, what do I actually want? Because the more clear we are on what we want, the more we can focus on that and keep taking actions aligned with that. And then it's more likely that we're actually able to manifest that thing.
So I want to segue a little bit to representation. You've brought this up a little bit already. And I think that something that you are incredibly good at is saying like, okay, this rep is not aligned with me anymore. I'm going to move on, even if I don't have a backup in place. And you mentioned sort of recently changing reps. How do you know when the rep you're with is no longer the right rep for you?
The manager that I talked about that I let go, that was with me when I booked this project and refused to negotiate her rate, that was kind of the final. It wasn't the final straw, but it was like getting close to like the straw that broke the camel's back, because I also know that in relationships, whether they're professional or romantic, we're humans and we have stuff in the past, and sometimes it's easy to like have one thing happen and you start relating to that person as like they're a piece of shit, and then everything that happens you see is like evidence for that they're a piece of shit.
Of course.
If that makes
Sure.
sense.
Yeah.
Especially for actors, like we just have a lot of like those relationships that we might not have healed in the past, or where we weren't seen, and then we're like projecting the past onto that person. So anyways, I definitely stayed with her longer than like my initial. What's funny is my initial instinct when I met with her, even though everything sounded good on paper, was I was like, this doesn't feel right. And I didn't listen.
Right.
And it was like such a beautiful lesson of like, you can actually trust your moment by moment intuition, even if it makes no sense. The biggest thing for me is, are you as an actor doing everything that you know to do to be empowered in your career? Are you checking in with them? Are you like, you know, updating your stuff? Are you training? Are you submitting, whatever that may be? If I know that I'm doing that and I have like a really good attitude and I'm doing the follow-up and checking in with them and seeing if they need anything from me, and it's still not going the way that it's going and I'm getting like little red flags here and there, that's how I know.
What's an example of a red flag other than obviously like not being willing to negotiate the money that they're going to get from you?
Yeah, that was the biggest one.
Yeah. Well,
It
and I
was
mean, and to be fair to her in this moment, like a lot of reps are sort of just kind of take themselves out of the short film game altogether, and kind of like it's not worth my time to deal with this. So it's not that it's new to her specifically that she wasn't doing that, but it is sort of like I do find that it feels a little bit like, okay, but you're not here to cultivate my career then, because
Mhm.
it takes doing all these kind of things to move a career forward. And if you're not going to support that, then clearly you're kind of not on board with actually getting my career going.
Well, I think too, so my rep, who was my LA and San Francisco rep at the time, now they're just San Francisco. I love my rep. Travis, shout out to Travis. He's amazing. I always felt really seen by him, like great communication. Like whenever I share anything with him as far as like here's some threads, here's like reviews, here's footage, I always get like an authentic, like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. You're a superstar. Like
Mm.
words of validation are really important to me. Eh, Words of validation, communication, and those have always been on point with him. And he was the one that said, hey, like, do you want me to ask if they'll cover our rate? Some actors are like, no, like, don't rock the boat. I just wanted to check with you before I did. And I was like, ask. What's the worst they can say? No. So we
Right.
did, and they said yes. And then I was like, oh, great. I'm just going to have my manager do the same thing. And she said some BS response of like, oh, that's just not how things are done. And like this condescending tone in this email to me. And I was like, oh, what? Like doing your job? Like, do you feel uncomfortable doing your job and asking for things? Aren't you a rep? Like, if I
Right.
feel more comfortable as an actor being like,
Yeah,
hey,
that's
will you like
concerning.
talking about money? I just was doing all the things, going to casting director things, being like, hey, I met up with this casting director. And then I had this casting director that I was talking to be like, does your rep soft pitch you? Because we get so many auditions. If they're not soft pitching you, like it's probably like there's no way that you're ever going to be seen. And then I literally was scheduling a meeting with her to discuss that. And also, like, based on what she said, was going to be like, hey, I don't think we should work together anymore. And then it's like she sensed what was on the horizon. She's like, the industry is really hard. Like, we're going to have to downsize our roster. And how you know that it's right is like if they send you a message saying we want to downsize our roster. And I felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. I literally was like, I'm free.
Yeah.
And then I like booked something with my San Francisco agent like the next week. I think what was telling to me about that experience was we have it and we do this with love too. We don't just do it with our professional relationships. Like better to like have a relationship than to be single. And I'm like, like think about it. Think about when you've been in some really shitty romantic relationships where you're doing like all the emotional lifting or the person's being how they're being and like it's draining your energy, it's stressing you out. But think about like if that wasn't there, the space that it would create for the really aligned
And
partner to come into your life.
not just romantic relationships. I am learning that is also all relationships in your life.
All relationships. Absolutely. I'm telling you, yeah, it's like it's funny when you start to curate your relationships and
Yeah.
you start to have like I have such a high standard now for all of the relationships of the people that I actually stay in
Mhm.
touch with that any of the ones that like where they start acting shitty or are like out of alignment are so glaring in contrast, right?
Yes. Yep.
So
Yep.
that was really what it was. I was like, "Oh my gosh, the energy that I was wasting of being like, she still hasn't responded to my email and I sent her like a thing 2 weeks ago." Like I sent her a thing to like ask about like meeting and she was like, "Why do we have to hop on the phone?" And I'm like, like whatever. I kept having this like general overall feeling kind of from the moment that I signed with her that it
Mm.
felt like she was like wanted me to prove myself to her
Yeah.
versus like her already seeing and acknowledging my talent. And the more I looked and the more that I saw like her roster and stuff, and I was like, oh, so she's waiting for me to like have some big break and then she'll start working for me.
Which is
That's what I discovered.
Yeah, which is the exact opposite of what reps are, right? Because that's already
Yeah.
how the industry is treating you. The industry is not going to buy into you until you get somewhere. So like the reps should be the one like group of people that are like pushing you the whole way and do buy into you before anyone
Yep.
else does. That's sort of their point. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Completely. There was so many things that I experienced with my rep Travis where I was like, oh, like he truly, truly cares about the betterment and the evolution of my career, even if that means me not having it with him. And it has you wanna stay with those people as long as possible because it's like they're trying for you and you're trying for them, and it's like, that is possible. It is possible with reps. I know it feels like it's difficult to find sometimes, but
Yeah. That's
it's,
so interesting. It reminds me of the best piece of advice I've ever gotten from a mentor. This is in my non-acting life, like
Mhm.
in day job kind of stuff, where he was sort of like the job of a boss is to advocate for their employees, even if that means that the employee ends up eventually like leaving the company. Like your job
Yeah,
is to help your employees grow. And too many bosses don't see it that way. They are working against their employees in a lot of ways,
yeah,
and sort of stunting their ability to move forward.
yeah,
And I think that does nothing, at least in my experience, other than lead to a lot of ill will, and
yeah,
disgruntlement within the company. And so it's certainly it's not going to be any different within like a rep and client situation where it's like, if we're working together and you really believe in me, this is harmonious and it's only going to work out for both of us later, even if
yeah.
I end up moving on from you. And I think that fear of moving on is just the same scarcity that everyone else has in this industry. Oh, well, if I do a good job and they move on from me, I don't get a piece of that pie of what I worked for. But it's like, you have no idea how that's going to come around again in a different way. Because also, like, if I love you and I think you're working for me and we're doing this together, I'm going to hang on to you. And
For
maybe there
sure.
will become a point at which I say, like, I
Or
need to
you're
move
gonna
on.
bring
But
them other clients. Like, if you move
exactly.
to another level of your career, that's what's
Right.
so funny is I don't think it's just a rep thing. I also think it's just the way that we our scarcity specifically and
Yeah.
in this kind of transactional culture that we're a part of. It's like, "Oh, like, what are you doing?" Versus if you actually are in integrity and
Right.
you're being a good person and you're doing your best and like I think there's also people that actually like being reps and love championing
Yes.
people versus there's people that just do it because they think that they can make money off it and like exploit artists and it's really
Yeah.
really messed up.
So, how did you go about looking for reps this time around so that you could find someone who was more aligned for you?
I did referrals, actually. That felt really aligned to do this time. I had people that I knew worked and were working that I really respected, and I just asked them. I just said, like, I wasn't even, like, trying to fish for them to, like, refer me. I was just like, "Hey, like, do you like your rep?" Like, I always like to find out, like, how did you get your rep, because I did the big, huge push, and I knew that I could do it again, but it just didn't feel right in that moment. Like it actually it's gotten to a point where I have been able to be like, "Oh, like if like it's okay if I don't have a rep for all the things as long as the reps that I have I really really like and really really see me like I trust in that." So, yeah, I had a couple people just refer me to their reps for meetings and that's what I did.
Any other advice to actors who are trying to figure out how to find aligned reps or to know if the ones they're with are the right ones for them?
I honestly think like the biggest probably most important advice that I can say um is and I know it seems like so much easier said than done, is like, do you love yourself and do you believe in yourself and your talent as the artist that you are? And if you don't, then what can you do to work through that so that it gets to a place where you do? Because I think that honestly is the thing that we deal with so much in the shitty interactions with reps or the rejection is when we don't and then we're going out there and being like to people and we're like validate me if I get a rep then it validates that I'm a good it's like no like I did that for so long and it's like it's no different from romantic relationships, right? Like if you're going out there and you're like there's something wrong with me, if I could find a relationship then someone will love me, then you're probably going to get in a not a very good relationship
Yeah.
versus if you're going out there and you're just like, I love myself and I'm being myself. And then usually what happens is you will attract the right person for you in time, in divine timing, whatever that is. So yeah, like working on self-love and believing in yourself. And if you don't, then like, cause sometimes I don't think we actually acknowledge this to a lot of actors. Sometimes there is a reason for our insecurity as actors. Like, I think
Mm.
sometimes we think it's just, we have to do self-love and mindset and so and that's really important too. But sometimes it's like, oh, like I got to do this Shakespeare thing and I haven't done Shakespeare in however many years, or I've never done Shakespeare and I don't feel comfortable doing it. I have not practiced enough where I actually have the confidence. Maybe I should take a class. Maybe I should work with ask someone who's done a lot of shit, like looking from that place of like, sometimes there actually is actionable stuff to do to have you feel prepared and ready to take
Right.
something on where you believe in yourself in that way. So yeah, self-love and believing in yourself, and also focusing on your training, focusing on the stuff that you can control, like doing the casting director workshops, doing a scene or a play with people for fun. Like, I know it's such a cliche, do your own work. Don't do your own work in order to, even though that's okay. Sometimes we do our own work
Right.
but so often when you do your own work in order to, it's just not the same as I'm going to do this because I love doing it and I'm going to do it for the sake of doing it. Do I want to make money? Yeah. Do I want to sell it? Yeah, of course.
Right.
But like reconnecting to the love and the passion for it, because when actors are creating, and I think this is true for all artists, when we're creating and we're passionate about what we're doing, it's like, that shit is magnetic. It is infectious. Also, it feels good. Don't we like living life that way? It's not just like we're going to do this in order to manifest the life we want. Doing that makes you feel like you already have the life that you want, even if you
Sure.
don't have any reps and you have no fame and you're not making any money from this. We might as well have fun if we're going to stress ourselves out this much and take on this industry and this job in the first place. I mean, right?
100%. If you're not having a good time, what are we doing? What are we doing?
What are we doing here?
Which is a
Yeah.
conversation I have with myself a lot.
Right?
What are we doing?
I have to do it on the daily of like,
yeah, on a daily.
like,
yeah,
oh,
for sure.
on the daily, like,
yeah.
am I gonna, it's like you're right about to film your a self-tape. Like, am I trying to prove something? Am I trying
Right.
to prove something? Am I trying
Right.
to get through this as fast as possible? Am I coming at this from like, I need to book this because I am
Right.
not enough? Or am I just gonna let it rip?
Yeah.
Can I just let myself have a little fun?
Yeah.
Even if it's a dramatic role?
I had an audition for a soap opera the other day.
Oh my gosh,
and I
fun!
kid you not, I turned my second take into a comedy. And I wasn't even trying. I just realized that I saw that you could play the scene a completely different way. And it tickled me so hard. And I was like, I'm just going to do it.
Wonderful.
It's
Why
completely
not?
the wrong tone for this show, but it's so funny. And I kind of just wanted to be like, I bet no one else is going to send you something that is a comedy. And you as a casting director might just be like, thank you for bringing a smile to my face.
Yeah.
You know?
Maybe they'll remember you for a comedy.
Who knows? I mean, I toned it down a little bit so it wasn't like clear, like I'm going full multicam on this, but you know what I mean? Like it was just, there are places where I was like, oh, this is funny. And it fits with the way it's written if you didn't know tonally that you're completely off. So
Yeah,
anyways,
I love it.
it just tickled me. So I did it.
There's a reason why they call it play. There's a play. We do a play to play.
Yeah. You mentioned, of course, getting, reps through referrals and whatever. And so I kind of wanted to actually talk to you about this concept of showing up. And what I mean by that is, you and I met in stand-up class. And the history of this class that I'm aware of, that showcase is never sold out until Carly. Carly sells out our showcase. But not only does Carly sell out our showcase, every show she does, she sells out.
Not
And that's a
every
really
show. Majority.
Okay, like 99% of shows she does.
Okay,
She sells out. And it's a big deal, right? Especially like for an early stage stand-up comic, like being able to bring people to shows is kind of the whole thing. And so you have this incredible capacity where people really show up for you. Like these are the relationships you seem to have in your life. And I've seen that both in this professional context we've talked about and also in a personal context. And so I
Benita was in my wedding.
I was in your wedding. And I guess the question I have for you is like, what have you done? What do you think you've done to cultivate relationships in your life that lead to ones where people really, really show up for you? And what advice do you have for other people?
That was a good question.
Thank you. I'm a podcast host.
It's you drop in those bomb questions. So as far as cultivating relationships, I do my best to keep in touch with people. Like if people invite me to their stuff, like I am very supportive and I think it's important to show up for other artists. I think the thing when it feels gross or inauthentic is like if you haven't heard from someone in a long time, or like there's a certain person in your life where they're always asking, but then they never show up for you. And what's funny is I think that's a huge block that gets in the way for artists and actors is like we worry about being that person. But you just gotta like look at yourself and be like, but am I that person? Am I the shitty person that just like uses people and like whatever? Like, no, I'm not. Here's the thing. I was in sales. I know that like in my sales training, I had to deal with on a daily basis all of the stuff that comes up for people of like, I don't want to ask and I feel awkward. So I know that that has a lot to do with it. Like I had to deal with all of the meaning that's around that stuff. And I broke through a lot of that stuff for myself in my job. I'm currently developing a course to teach artists how to sell out their shows and just to sell in general, because so much of it is just the barriers that get in the way of there's so much like literal logistical things that when people tell me like, oh, well, yeah, I invited 2 people and I'm like, did you follow up with them
Right.
and like make sure that they were coming? Like just basic logistical stuff that you do for like regular parties. So there's that stuff, but there's also a lot of mindset stuff in it. And I think that I've always just been good about letting my excitement and how excited I am to share a thing with people
Yeah.
be the thing that leads in my invitations. And I think maybe just because I've done it a lot, I just don't have anything going on about like I'm inconveniencing people. I don't have anything going on about like, oh, people are busy. I have it that everyone in my life and that people that I meet are big people. They're adults. If something doesn't work for them, they won't go.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like I think it's the excitement. And like I look for myself, like her theater company, we sold out so many shows. For Pretty Funny Women, we sold out so many shows. It's like the thing for me is I could tell that there were so many women in our group that like were confronted by inviting people, but also like they were just nervous for the showcase, as we all were. It's the
Right.
most nervous I've ever been, I think. I think it's like it keeps elevating. Like I was absolutely terrified, and then I like sung in front of people last year, and I was like, "Oh wait, no, this is more scary." Um, but I could, for me, like when she said, like, "Oh, we've never sold out," there was a little bit of this, like, "Oh, is that a challenge? Like, what? So people just don't show up for female comedians? What bullshit is that?" And I knew how hilarious everybody was. So in my invitation, it actually really wasn't like come and see me. I'm amazing. But I was like, I'm doing stand up for the first time. I'm absolutely terrified. I'm like, and there's unbelievable, amazing female comics. I'm like, it's going to be amazing because I believed it was going to be amazing. I started inviting people the second I was in the class. I didn't know. I didn't know for sure what my set was yet. I actually didn't know if you guys were going to be amazing or if I was going to be amazing. But like who I was in the class was, we're going to be amazing even before we had fulfilled on it, if that makes sense. I just love artists so much. So it's like to watch people work so hard on their set and then like get to the kind of the most important part if you think about it, like
Yeah.
to not do the last 5 to 10% of like, will you come see me so I can actually perform the thing?
Right.
So that was there a lot in my sharing from the get-go, from the moment class was, I was like, I'm in a stand-up class. I'm so terrified and I feel so alive. Will you come to my showcase? I just invited people for like that whole entire class. And I had it that we were going to sell out. And I was like, oh, we're going to sell out. And then we did. They had to turn people away. When I said it was going to sell out, it wasn't just woo manifestation. It was a guarantee.
You heard it right here, folks. Carly will sell out. What I'm hearing in what you're saying
But
is like a real deep belief in the value of what you're doing. That we're not asking favors to have people support us or to watch our work or whatever, but that actually like we're providing value in the art that we're making.
Yes. 100%.
Okay, so this brings me to like the big picture questions I wanted to ask. And the first one I think I want to ask is like, why does our particular form of art matter?
Acting?
Yeah.
Ugh. I think it matters because I think that we live in a very binary world, and we live in a world where people have it that you are good, you are bad, you are evil, you are not evil. It's so easy to someone makes a mistake and we write them off. There's such a lack of compassion in this world when there's really good acting and really good storytelling that encompasses it. You know, when they write really good parts for actors and then they perform it. It's not just the actor that gets to set aside their judgments and step into this character and see this new perspective of what it is to be a human being and understand where someone's coming from. And other people get to experience it too by watching it on the screen. And I think that what we do literally moves people from one realm to another realm. I think that
Mm.
there's kind of the default way where we walk around in the world and, it makes sense. It's part of our defense mechanism of like, oh, like who are you and what do you want? And I gotta always have a little bit of, wall there. And then you watch a piece of art and you watch someone acting that is so good and you get swept up in the world of what they're creating where you almost forget that you're watching a film or you forget that you're watching a play. You walk away from watching that and you're like, maybe I should call my dad. Like maybe I should, go after the thing that I've been avoiding going after. Like, or you walk away and you're like, maybe I was wrong. And I I think that, even I think a lot of mediocre art is what we tend to see, and a lot of surface level art is what we tend to see. And usually people walk away and they don't get that transformation. That's possible too. It's
Mm.
possible to have, art that's entertainment. Like I need laughs, but I also don't think that I think that we can have people laugh and also have people get their life.
Yeah. I realized because I that's actually a question that I've struggled with for a really long time. You know that I come from a background of being like a civil rights and a human rights lawyer. Like that work for me, there was a very clear direct impact of like what am I doing with my life and how does that benefit society in some way? And
Yeah.
making the choice to kind of like really refocus my life as an artist. I've struggled for a really, really long time with like, am I contributing in some way to society by making this
Mm,
choice? Or is it like a selfish because this is like my happy place, but like it's not doing anything
yeah.
for anybody else. And I honestly, the pandemic was the thing that made me be like, oh, art is what makes life worth living. Like it's how
Yeah.
we
It gives us
connect.
meaning.
Yeah, it gives us
Yeah.
meaning. We understand our lives through it. It's the thing that like brings us solace when we need it. It expresses our joy. It
Mm,
and because everything that I was doing during the pandemic, it was all different forms of connecting with art. A lot of music, a lot of poetry, a lot of like
hmm.
you needing to understand and process the experience, and art was the only way that I could do that.
Yeah.
And that was really the first time I think I understood like why this matters, and in a way that was larger than just like my own joy around it.
Yeah.
But I do think it's something that I still a little bit struggle with is like how do I make sure that as my career moves forward, it continues to be something that serves and is
Mm,
not it's not about taking or it's not about my own benefit to the exclusion of anything else. But it's
yeah.
also interesting because I think I ride this line of being like, and it's also okay to have things that are for me.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah, I
don't.
was literally just gonna
Yeah,
say, like, why is it an issue that it benefits you and others? Like,
yeah,
those,
yeah.
again, they don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Right.
And I think that's I think I've shared with you that, last year I discovered for myself because I used to be in a job that was, coached and led people, and it was not a very nice environment. And it had me kind of shut my heart away from ever like coaching and teaching people again. And because I literally had it from that experience, I'm like, there's no way that I can fulfill and take care of myself and what matters to me and make a difference. Like
Yeah.
it's at the expense of me.
Yeah.
And then it's like it got to this point where I started to open myself back up to it again. Like, well, maybe it actually is possible that I can make a difference and my life sings. And what if I've been resisting the very thing that would actually have my life sing? Like, does that make sense? I have this Artist Way cohort that I'm starting this week that's starting on Saturday. And I'm like beyond thrilled. And like people are like texting me that they're like nervous and excited. And I'm just reminded of like, oh my God, like I'm gonna get just as much out of this as they're gonna get. Like,
Yeah.
what a win-win. It's possible for it to not be this like martyr sacrifice, you know? And one of the things she talks about in that book even just, I just reread the intros and the forewords and stuff, is just how bankrupt of an idea it is that making art is selfish.
Yeah.
And that it's this, that it isn't part of this greater cause and part of this bigger thing. And like, I don't know why I just thought of this example, but it's like we've seen the power of art and how it can impact history. Like look at the impact of Birth of a Nation. It literally reawakened the KKK that was dormant. Now, negative impact, still an impact, right? But it's like, look at the
Like, not
power
that
of art and storytelling,
Sure.
even though it was biased and even though we have our opinions about it, like that is the power of storytelling, even if
Right.
it didn't go the way, like, I mean, the power of narrative, look at our politics. Like, it's all storytelling.
It's all storytelling. I mean, and there is a reason why, like, in authoritarian governments, artists are one of the people that are,
Yeah. Murdered first? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Because free speech, like when people are thinking and they're thinking freely and they're speaking freely and they're writing freely, it is considered a danger.
It's a
So
danger.
like it's
It's a threat.
good to be reminded of like the big context. It's good to be reminded that like actors used to be considered like worthless
Yeah.
and it used to be dangerous. Women weren't even allowed to be on stage.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that was considered so dangerous. So, like, I have to remind myself of, like, the big context of it often because, of course, the censor or the gremlins in our head, right, are gonna say all sorts of bullshit to us. Like, "Oh, like, you think you're making a difference? Meh, 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 meh." It's like, even on, like, a personal level, when I think of when I'm happy and fulfilled in my life and the difference that makes for the people I'm closest to be around someone who's happy and fulfilled and able to, like, give from an overflowing cup, like, even the difference that makes on a personal level, because then that makes a difference for them, and then that echoes out into their life, into their life, into their life. It's like,
What do you think is the biggest challenge to succeeding as an actor these days, and how do you try to overcome it?
these are the two biggest challenges, I think, because the biggest ones that I deal with. I think it's just the saturation of the market, right? Just stuff that we can't control. The fact that there's so fewer projects being made, and there's so much desperation in the industry, and it's like the people that rise to the top much more effortlessly, not saying that it's not possible for us, but much more effortlessly are the people that are born into privilege, that have money and like direct nepotism. So it's like I'm the more that I look at the industry, I'm like, "Oh, this person got in when they were 5. Oh, and this person is the son of so and so or the
Right.
daughter of so and so." And I'm like, uh, and you start to beat yourself up and be like, "Oh my God, this 21-year-old with this like feature." And I'm like, and then I like look it up and I'm like, okay, I feel better. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, you start like beating yourself up. I'm like, I've been trying so hard for so long. Like, so there's that, which is like so much of that we can't control.
Right.
But I do think us talking about it is important. The more we talk about it, the more we point it out, the more we say this doesn't work and this is just a reflection of the 1% of our society and just capitalism in general and our economy and all of that. But that's a whole other thing. But the biggest thing that I think that we actually do have control over is our context,
Hmm.
or another way, our context, like how we view something, our why of why we're doing something, and our mindset around it. That's the first thing that I notice for me that goes out as an artist. And the first thing I notice for almost all the artists I've ever coached, all the artists that are just my friends that I just kind of, checking in with every once in a while, seeing how they're doing is the way that we view it and keeping an empowering context while we're doing it. Like if we're doing auditions and we're like, doesn't matter anyway, just got to get through this. What's the point? I'm not ever gonna, and like that's what's always operating in the background, and we're not doing things to interrupt it and to deal with our mental health and make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, make sure we're getting enough sleep, and that we're meditating and whatever it is else that you need to do so that you have the experience. Most of the time, you're not always going to have the experience, but I would just say majority of the time where you can walk in to the audition show up at the page, show up on the stage of like, I am here because I'm transforming the world. Like, I'm fucking ready. Whatever it is, like feeling good and being empowered as you do the thing
Yeah.
is, I think, if not just as important, maybe not even more important than doing the thing.
Hmm.
Because if
Hmm.
I'm going to do the thing, I've had times where I've acted where the context is off and it's a horrible experience, you
Right.
know? And then
Right.
it's like, that's not fun either. Nobody wants to do that. So yeah, I just do a lot. I do a lot of stuff for my context. Like I will go on walks. If I start to notice that I'm doing something from this place of like, I got to get this done and I'm like glazing over and I'm starting to feel like life isn't worth living, you know? Like I sit and journal. I will read something. Like I will go dance and sing. Like, or I will go lay down and not.
Yeah.
It's impossible for me to nap, but I will rest.
Rest.
I will rest because I think that's important. You know, it's vital. It's vital, and it's one of the hardest things to do because it's a habit, like anything.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of practice doing the opposite of that as artists. I think.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. What is your wildest take on how we could be doing all of this differently? How, like, being an artist, an actor, a
Wildest
creative.
okay, I think I don't know how, but I also think that it's good to engage in things even if you don't know how. And I was just thinking about the industry and how bankrupt it is, and I was like, can you imagine if the people that were at the top of the call sheet, so to speak, or at the top of the pyramid who made the most money. So the stuff that we see in the magazines of like David Zaslav, Bob Iger, 40 million, 240 million.
Yeah.
Like if that level of wealth was being invested and treat like the people that were actually creating the thing, the
Yeah.
actors, but like not just the few A-list actors, like all the actors, the writers, the directors. Like I literally like had the thought, and like I said, it's probably is the wildest take because people hear socialism or communism and they're like, you know, um, but it's all propaganda.
Yeah.
Um, Can you imagine? Can you imagine if like all of like I think of White Lotus and how like there was like a lot of like big name people in that, or at least like medium name, let's be real.
Sure.
Um all had to make the same amount of money for it to be possible to be filmed with the budget that they had. And everyone was like, Absolutely, because it's White Lotus and I'm down and I want to make this really great piece of art with this really great showrunner that like
Right.
shines a light on, these types of people in the world that we live in. Like
Right.
but can you imagine if like ego was checked at the door and if all directors, all the ones that make billions of dollars, or even like the showrunners or even the actors, if they all got, okay, you could keep doing this, but then the industry's going to die.
Right.
Or you could make a moderate salary along with everybody else and have everyone be fulfilled, well paid for, happy, like flourishing. Like if we gave the most of the money to the people actually creating the art, and then of course business is important. I'm not saying that the agents and the people that are doing the producing or providing the money should not be paid well, but like does it have to be either or?
Yeah.
Does it have to be like, but it's just like I said, like it would take like a radical shift in just the way that things have been being operated. It's just it's a reflection of our economy and what's happening in every other industry.
Exactly.
It's not
Yeah.
not unique to Hollywood.
Make the arts socialist again. Massa.
But anyway, I had the thought of like, you know what? I might not be able to, you know, obviously transform the whole industry, but I do think it's the more that we talk about it, the more it becomes possible.
Yeah.
And like, what if like I'm the first production company that does that,
Right.
and consistently creates really, really good quality art. And it gets to a point where like that's all that people are intaking and taking in. Like I have it that A24, at least as of now, hasn't like fully sold out. Like the work that they typically create is of quality reliably over and over again. They get like really, really big name people to do their stuff that are willing to do it for cheaper because what they keep creating is great. So it is possible.
Yeah.
We just have to
Yeah.
do it.
No, I 100% agree with you. I think it's not only possible, it's actually inevitable, because otherwise
Yeah.
we are just looking at the collapse the same way we're looking at the collapse of like late stage capitalism. Like something has to come after
Mhm.
this, because whatever we're in right now cannot continue to function. And so either it will be completely overtaken by, companies whose primary focus is not the arts, which is already part of what's happening. And then,
Yeah.
you know, um, I think you can only push people into sort of the gigification of like every part of our lives until at some point like there's no stability at all, and
Yep.
revolution happens. Like
Revolution happens, and, like, if they keep raising the water, on us little by little, it's like, what do you think perpetuates the wealth of the 1%? We
right.
do. Everyone collectively. Like, there are little things that we can do, and I have gotten better at if something is garbage or bad quality, I don't watch it.
Yeah.
Like, people don't get the value of, like, something as little as that is money.
Oh, I think
Is like you
100%.
have the power. Like when people are like, "Oh, I hate garbage reality TV," but then they like keep watching garbage reality
Right.
TV. I'm like,
And that's what
literally
gets
like what you
funded.
that's
Yeah.
what gets funded. And I'm like, so it's when people complain so often about, just certain things and I'm like, "Well, stop supporting it then."
Right.
Like it's not a ton, but it's like especially this past year, we did not re-up our Amazon subscription. We stopped
Yeah.
shopping at Target. Like I literally I'm like we like Costco. Costco's our jam.
Oh yeah.
Perfect example of conscious capitalism. You
Yes.
can take care of your employees
Yep.
and you can provide a great service.
Yep.
It is possible. And it's just like it doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but enough people do that
Right.
and then those companies will either evolve or they'll die,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
We just haven't
But
gotten to a point yet where enough people are willing to say like, let me vote with the power that I do have. And
mhm.
hopefully we are, inching closer to that. I guess we will see in time.
We will see. Well, at some point, people won't be able to afford anything and everything's going to collapse. So,
That's right. Correct. Is there anything you're working on that you'd like to tell folks about?
yeah, I have my pilot, this mockumentary sitcom it's about this dysfunctional theater company that loses all its funding and they have to band together to save their beloved theater. They have to become a true ensemble. I've been pitching that around town, and so if anybody is listening to this, they're like, "Hey, I know so and so at this place," or "I work at a production company or a studio. I'd love if you want to hear more, hit me up."
Is there anything you'd like to tell other actors who are watching this?
If you really love it and it's meant for you, then keep going. Just keep showing up.
If you're enjoying this podcast, consider doing that like and subscribe thing. I hear it helps. And sign up for my weekly Substack, where I talk about how I'm incorporating lessons from these episodes into creating my own meaningful artistic life in this late stage hyper capitalist nightmare.